Hey there, everyone. I think this might have worked this time. So hopefully you can hear me and you can see me. I think this is it. I think I've got it. So I just had to switch what I was doing. Welcome, everyone. It has been a while since we've had a chance to connect like this. I hope you're doing well. If you are joining me live, let me know where you're joining me from in the chat. I know that we are between eclipses right now, and that is something a lot of people have questions about. I've also got a really exciting offer for my full astrology training program that is available for just a couple more weeks. So I want to tell you a little bit about that. But as those of you who have joined me before for these Q&As here on YouTube, it's a very kind of informal catch up and connect. And if you have got questions about something to do with astrology, let me know in the chat and I'm going to do my very best to help you. I can see a couple of you chiming in the chat, so that is great. It looks like things are connected and working. Took me a couple of goes to get settled because it has been a while. So thank you for being here. How are you doing? How was the big solar eclipse for all of you? It's definitely some very crunchy kind of astrology right now. So I hope that you are all taking care of yourselves and doing as well as you can. I can see Diamond Girl joining us from the Pacific Northwest. Welcome. If you are on the live call, just let me know in the chat where you are joining me from. And it's just starting to get really chilly where I am in Southern Ontario. I've got lots of trees with golden leaves on them outside, which is really striking to look at. So let's talk a little bit about what this really unique period is. You know, we've just had one eclipse a few days ago, and we're going to have another eclipse towards the end of the month. So this period, it's often about a 2-week period, if we're just having 2 eclipses, is what I think of as the eclipse tunnel. We're in this very kind of unusual energetic space where patterns are breaking, regular rituals, regular routines are kind of coming apart, if you like. We're very much in the space of the nodes, of the north or south node. We've got that churning, agitated energy that is kicking up things, kicking up dust, kicking up shadows, kicking up old stuff. And so that can be a little destabilizing. We can see that in our personal lives. We can see that in collective events. And so it's a time where we want to be doing what we can to calm things down as best as possible. I can see so many of you chiming in the chat now. Welcome, welcome. Bia is here from New Zealand. Welcome, first time watching. Great to have you here. Colorscapes is joining us from Toronto in Canada, which is not far from where I am now. Great to see you here, Barbara. Barbara's joining us from Brooklyn in New York. Melinda's saying that in the last couple of days with the Sun and Mercury going over the South Node, it's been really draining. And I have to agree, you know, something that happens around eclipse time, but isn't eclipses, but is sort of the same, is that we do have planets moving over either the north or south node. And this year in October 2023, we've got a bunch of planets moving over the south node in Libra. We had Mars on the south node around October 4th. We've got the Sun and Mercury just going over the south node now around the middle of October. And so having 3 planets, of course, we had the moon go over the south node in this time frame as well. That was right around the day of the eclipse. So I guess technically 4 planets in just a couple of weeks going over the south node is really creating a lot of that draining, depleting, exhausting kind of energy. That sense of feeling very spent or very emptied out because the south node is in the sign of Libra. it really has a depleting quality to air element things, to relationships or interpersonal connections, or to our mindset and our mental space. Can also show that sort of depleting, exhausting quality around communication or around technology. And so I think there's a real need to do the opposite of air, which I often think of as earth, the grounding, the embodied, the tactile approach. And that can sometimes help soothe, calm, can help stabilize, can help us find some sort of footing in this very unstable period that we're in. So thanks for mentioning that, Melinda. That is a really interesting point. And yes, I can see Illust here talking about K2 times. We are definitely in the realm of the Dragon's Tail K2 with all of this South Node activity. You'll probably be pleased to know that then that in the next 24 to 48 hours, the Sun and Mercury are moving away from the South Node. Of course, Mars has already done that. And by the time we get to the 23rd of October, with the planets moving out of Libra, we're kind of stepping away from this very intense South Node or K2 period that we have been in. So that is something to keep in mind. It's very unstable, particularly with Mars involved as well. So definitely curious to hear, where you're joining us from, how you are navigating these unsettled K2 times. And happy to sort of put that timeline on it so you've got a sense of how things are shifting. I'm just starting to get ready and recording November astrology for the people in the monthly astrology guide membership. And November is just a really different month astrologically. So we've got, planets in different places making a totally different set of aspects and bringing different kinds of influences through. So it definitely feels like a shift as we head in to the new month. So if you're here and you've got questions, let me know. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. For those of you who are joining me live, I'm more than happy to answer as best I can. At this point, I just want to take a minute and share with you about the membership that I've got going. Sorry, not the membership, the course bundle. So if you have wanted to study astrology, if you want to add a little bit more magic, a little bit more meaning, a little bit more of that mystical mood to your life, my astrology training program has a new intake starting November 6th. And to celebrate that, we have got a special bundle price offer, which is the best value we've ever offered. And so if you're interested in that astrology training program, pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com. There's loads of info right on the homepage that will take you to any questions you might have. We've got video classes. There are more than 70 hours of video classes inside the program. There are live Q&As that happen with me. You get access to a private student discussion forum, and there are also homework activities to help you practice the knowledge that you're learning, and you'll get personalized feedback on that as well. I'm actually just going to quickly take you on to the website here. So this is my website, kellysastrology.com, and right here on the homepage is all the info you need for the training program bundle registration offer, which is available until November 6th. And if you click through onto that, there is a huge info page about everything you need to know about the course. How do you know if you're ready for a full astrology training program? Maybe you're curious about why you're here. Maybe you want to live a life that's got divine inspiration at the center of it. Maybe you're really interested in meaning and purpose, or maybe you're trying to make sense of yourself, of the people around you, or some of the events that you've lived through. They're all clues that you may be ready to go a lot deeper with your understanding of astrology. So as I mentioned, we've got video lessons, we've got homework, we've got supplementary reading, online discussion, so much support for you to help you move through this really rich and life-changing material. So you can find out all the details you need over on kellysastrology.com. And there's our payment options. The discounted bundle one-off payment rate means that you save more than $300 off the regular registration. We do have a payment plan available where you can make 12 monthly payments, and that also gives you that saving of over $300 as well. If you decide to take the program, we'll be studying and learning together over the next 18 months, and you'll graduate towards the end of 2025 with your certificate in astrology. So hopefully that gives you some info. And if you need more about the bundle, let me know in the comments below, or you're welcome to reach out to my student support services through the email address, which is students@kellysastrology.com. So one way or another, we can get your questions answered or guide you through registration if that's what you need. So with that little info said, back to our discussion here live on YouTube. So if you have any questions, let me know. I can see comments. Sarah's saying this time feels very significant in between the eclipses. I can totally appreciate that. A different Sarah is saying the eclipse is on her ascendant, and she's been heavily impacted by the terrorist attacks happening in Israel. And Sarah's saying she just wants to be on her couch permanently, sending you so much love and your loved ones as well. Melinda's asking about any thoughts on the first quarter moon in Capricorn in the middle of the eclipses here, with that moon being in detriment. So let me just grab this data. Okay, so that's coming up this weekend, October 20th and 21st. I mean, I don't have as many thoughts on that, to be honest with you, Melinda. It is the moon in detriment. The moon, so let's go back to our understandings of what it means to have a planet in detriment. And so having a planet in detriment creates an inconsistent or an unsteady quality. And so when the moon is in detriment, it might be that emotionally, or in terms of our feelings, sometimes in terms of our physical body and our well-being, things can be a little bit out of sorts. And so given that we're already in a bit of an out of sorts time, being that we're between two eclipses, that might compound that quality. I know that with planets at the moment going through the latter part of Libra or the latter part of Capricorn, they are interacting with Pluto, who is still sitting at the tail end of Capricorn. So we're getting, a square from the sun to Pluto. We've got the moon conjunct Pluto. And so that does add some intensity. It feels like, when we're doing timing and we're using the moon, that first quarter moon is like a pushing or a breakthrough. It represents a turning point, a shift. Sometimes it can be a shift of, here's how I want to make things better, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Other times it can be, this isn't working and we're going to have to shake things up. So it's that idea of having to push through what feels like a crisis moment or a turning point moment so that we can change the nature of what we're grappling with. So that's a couple of thoughts there, Melinda. But if there's something else that you were hoping to hear about, feel free to let me know. So interesting to see all the comments here. And Melinda saying, thank you. Melinda saying, congratulations on creating your whole course, Kelly. Thank you so much. It is such an exciting thing, to share. And for any of you who are thinking, look, I'm not a beginner, I don't need to go back to the very start. If you have taken a couple of my astrology training courses and you'd like to do the whole program, you can certainly get a credit for fees that you've already paid if you've registered via my website, kellysastrology.com. So just reach out to the help@kellysastrology.com team for that. But if you're thinking, I don't need the whole program, there's just a few courses, you can certainly take the courses that are of interest to you via the a la carte method. So that's definitely option. Some questions here. great questions coming through. So JK is asking, I'll read JK's info here. So JK is saying, I've been out of work all year with the strikes and currently have Pluto squaring my 6th and 10th house ruling planet. And then ask, which is Venus, and their progressed sun. So when Pluto brings endings, do you recommend going into a whole new field altogether, trying to work with the energies? That's a really great question. You know, Pluto is squaring your personal ruler of the 10th and ruler of the 6th, which is your Venus. And so when Pluto does bring endings, it is often an encouragement to try to recreate in an entirely different way. And it may be, I mean, when your work is impacted by strikes, obviously there's a lot of things going on that are out of your control to a certain degree. You know, being part of a union, for instance, you sort of have to go with the collective choice there. And so that can certainly be something to be looking at here. When Pluto squares the ruler of the midheaven or squares the ruler of the 10th, there is sometimes a situation that comes up in and around work that highlights the power dynamics. It sort of really makes it very clear where we do and don't have control over our everyday environment or our work space. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable or a little bit confronting. We know that Pluto is a planet of regeneration and renewal, that idea of death and rebirth. And so that is something to keep in mind as you're navigating this. You know, is there somewhere else that you can move towards or a different direction professionally? And I say that understanding that it's not always easy to course correct, especially, you know, if you're well into an established career. And I would be curious for you to kind of maybe check in around the full timeline. You know, is your Venus at 27 of the cardinal signs, or is it 28 or 29? Like, how much longer is there of your Pluto Venus transit left? And that may be a clue as to whether trying to find your way back to something familiar or whether a more drastic shift is necessary. I'm not sure if that's helped or not, JK. I really appreciate your question. I really feel for you in that situation of having been out of work for so long. So yeah, let me know if there's more clarification that you need. Okay, so actually JK's just jumped in and said that their Venus is at 28 Aries. And so there's a couple of things there. You are very close to being done, because I think Pluto will finish at 28 Capricorn very, very soon. I think by the end of December, because next year we're only dealing with 29 of Cardinal. So you're almost there. But we also know Venus in Aries it's one of the detriment placements of Venus in Aries. And so sometimes when we have a big outer planet transit to a natal planet that's in detriment, part of what comes up is sort of revealing or showing us this sort of instability that is kind of baked into that planet. And it may be that having a couple of options is just generally a good strategy, so that when one thing is a little unreliable where work is concerned, you can put another thing into play. So that's my sense sitting with what you've shared. Hopefully that gives a little something, but yeah, if you want more clarification or want me to say more, please do let me know. Okay, great questions coming through here, everybody. One question, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Illust is asking, any thoughts on the vibe shifts as outer planets go direct through the rest of 2023? I think when I saw your question, I glanced at it quickly and I read it as a different question. So I don't have a huge sort of maybe ready to go thought on, you know, planets going direct as we get to the end of 2023. What I might say, you know, just sort of off the cuff there would be, Pluto particularly, but Neptune getting very close too, they're coming to the end of their time in their current signs. And so with Pluto going direct in Capricorn and then Neptune going direct in Pisces, there is this sense of we're getting close to the final act. What is the final piece of the Pluto and Capricorn puzzle? What is the final piece of the Neptune in Pisces, dream, fantasy, nightmare that we need to process or work through? And so these outer planet stations towards the end of a zodiac sign feel like they're bringing us towards the completion or the finalization of something that's been going on for a lot longer. When I first saw your question, I was thinking about 2025, where Pluto is more established and settled in, more permanently settled into Aquarius, and where we're going to see Neptune going into Aries. And we were also going to start to see Uranus going into Gemini. And I think that really marks, 2025, it's sort of the middle of the decade, but we're going to have all three outer planets change signs. And that is going to bring a very different quality of energy into this back half or second half of this decade of the 2020s. I won't necessarily speak to each of those planets individually at this point in time, although I have previously done a lecture on Pluto and Aquarius, a deep dive in that. So I can share that link. It'll be on my website, once we wrap up today. But just thinking about Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, and Neptune in Aries, we've got 2 fire and an air sign. We've got a lot more sort of movement and mobile and active energy coming through. So that feels like a lot more motion. It feels like change, whether it's progress in terms of like evolution and development, whether it's just a lot of activity, a lot of busyness, maybe things going on that are creating distractions. It does feel like it's getting quite hot. And, another way to think about some of these longer term trends is, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that we had in 2020 and how that kicks off a 20-year cycle. You could also think about that 20-year cycle as having like a quarter moon vibe or a full moon vibe or a final quarter moon vibe. And we're still very much in what would be the waxing equivalent of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. We're still in the growth, the pushing, the shake-up part of it. And we're at that point until Jupiter and Saturn make their opposition, which will be approximately 2030. I haven't got the exact date here, but you could certainly look it up. Basically, when transiting Jupiter and transiting Saturn come to oppose each other, that's their sort of full moon moment. And so we are still in this like spread out, take up space, shake up vibe. So this is a little bit of a different question than what you were asking, but hopefully it's interesting for all of you who are listening. Great questions today, team. I love to hear what you're all thinking about and what you're all grappling with. And JK's just jumped back in to say, brilliant. Thank you. My pleasure. So happy to help. Okay. Lovely. Great. I'm so glad this is helpful. The special bundle offer on the astrology training program, you can find out all the details at kellysastrology.com. It's available only until November 6th. After that, it's back to full price. So if you are thinking you want to learn, I know it's a big chunk of money. And if you're sort of thinking, I can't quite make that lump sum now, but I do want to lock in, we do have a payment plan option as well, which is a couple of $100 a month for the next 12 months. And your training is covered for nearly 2 years. So if you do want to really get a solid foundation in your astrology, I'd love to see you in there. I'm going to take 1 or 2 more questions and then we will wrap up for today. Okay, so let me just have a scroll back. There's a question here, and I'm pretty sure this is from Jason in relation to Venus, saying that it has been very interesting seeing the changes occurring since Venus in Leo retrograde has ended. What changes have I noticed personally? It is really interesting. I think the Venus cycles kind of don't get their full due, the Venus retrograde cycles. There was something about Venus in Leo that felt like, that steadiness of Leo, that it wasn't great. And there were things that needed to be thrashed out and debated and negotiated. And as soon as that Venus in Leo period, so the retrograde ended and then Venus moved back through Leo, and then she's come into Virgo. And I think for me, it sort of felt like this long period of whatever things were being grappled with Venus in Leo. You know, she was squaring Uranus and squaring Jupiter, both in Taurus. So there was a lot of negotiation energy in this particular Venus retrograde this year in 2023. Those things are not resolved yet, but it feels like the ability to connect and interact in a meaningful way has kind of fallen apart. And what I'm sort of speaking to here is the movement of Venus into Virgo, which is the full placement of Venus. And, you know, Venus in Virgo this year is sort of a little more tricky because we've got the opposition to Saturn. And of course, we still have the opposition to Neptune. And so it's not really ideal because Venus in Virgo is very nitpicky. It can be very critical. Don't get me wrong. There are some incredibly talented people who have Venus in Virgo in their birth chart. And there is something about Venus in Virgo for honing and developing a very specific skill or talent that I really appreciate in the natal chart with Venus in Virgo. But in terms of Venus in Virgo as a transiting influence, it does feel that it's very pedantic in a way that is to the detriment of discussion, collaboration, interaction, or even negotiation. And so I think that's a little bit problematic. And because Venus in Leo was a little bit more clear, a little bit more specific, I don't know, there felt like there was a little bit of openness in that tail end of Venus in Leo once the retrograde was over that is not available right now. And so in early November, when Venus comes into Libra, I think that's particularly the first part of Venus in Libra. That's going to bring, hopefully, my sense is that because of the sextile from Libra back to Leo, that's going to bring a little bit of progress on some of the kind of stalemate discussions and debates and negotiations, particularly to do with a lot of the different labor unions, which was a huge part of the middle of this year. I think Venus in Libra is going to be a little bit more conducive to moving those, you know, moving any two parties that are disagreeing towards some sort of compromise, or, you know, we can agree here kind of thing. And so we've got a few more weeks before Venus gets into Libra for that. But I don't know if that was the exact question, but anyway, hopefully that info was helpful, and let me know if that was your question, if you need more. I think it was Jason, but it might not have been. Okay. So great questions. Melinda's asking, would you occasionally consider raffling a spot on your consult list? This is such a kind question. Thank you. So here's how, if we've not worked together one-on-one for a consult, here's how you can get on the list. I do occasionally open up my wait list for people who are inside the Astrology Guide membership. And in fact, if you're a current Astrology Guide member, you can email, reach out and ask about how to get on that list. And then as I get openings, we can email you and set that up. Sometimes that happens within a few weeks if there's a cancellation or somebody drops off. Sometimes it's a few months. But if you are an existing member in the Astrology Guide membership, that is available to you. And if you're a student, if you are currently studying with me, that is also an option. So at the moment, that's how you can get on the list for a consult. At this point, I don't have any plans to open it up any more widely, but never say never. I do love seeing clients for consults. I do, you know, a handful of clients. I have about a day and a half each week where I see clients, and it's very like private, sacred work with astrology, but for me personally, it's some of the most joyful use of this material. Don't get me wrong. I love teaching about astrology. I love sharing about astrology. The podcast has been really fun that I started this year, but there is something really special and really unique about client work with astrology. Great. Thank you, Jason. I'm so glad that was helpful for you. Thank you all so much for joining me here today. I'm going to have to duck off and go and eat my dinner, which I can smell is coming up from the kitchen. It's ready to go. I know it was very spontaneous. I think the next eclipse coming up on October 28th, it's an eclipse, so I don't want to oversell it, but it's got a little bit more of a positive tone to it. My next podcast episode is going to be all about that. So stay tuned for that. It'll be out next week, and hope to see some of you in class in a couple of weeks if that's the right time for you. Otherwise, I will see you back here again on YouTube sometime soon. All right, everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day or evening.